Oh, got up a short time ago. I was I apologize in advance for whatever background noises that you're able to hear. These are circumstances out of my control, and I happen to be around a very obnoxious crowd that just can never be normal and not, you know, make a bunch of noise. So if you're able to hear that at any point throughout the stream, I sincerely apologize from the bottom of my heart. And I am very genuine when I say that there is nothing I can do about it. I'm as far away from that group as I possibly can be. Um, so just keep that in mind because I know I'm going to be blamed by somebody for you have this noise in your background, but it's never understood that when you don't live by yourself, you can't control you know the elements. So it's just one of those things I really despise. Anyways, I got a PC about a month ago, and I remember I mentioned I got Xenoverse 2 and Fighters and Kakarot. Um and with I think it was so I was just thinking about another game. I was at Dead by Daylight, but I can't even play it because every time I try to do a ranked match, it always freezes. And I know it's that game it doing something wrong because every other game I've played, I can get online and not have it lag. Um, but I was thinking of getting another game, and the one I'm the closest to getting as far as like looking at all the different stuff on there and just on Steam and like contemplating is probably what's the name of that Naruto game? Ultimate Ninja Storm 4. It's got a really big rock. I played the third one on Xbox. God, that must have been 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I remember that game was the last one released before the manga ended. So I had like some original stuff in there. But I really enjoyed the third game. I've been told the fourth one's really good as well. They're selling it for like $30 on there, which is a pretty good price considering some of the other stuff on there and how high it goes. Um, I don't know. I might get it. I'm the only thing that's kind of making me a little bit reluctant is I want to see a few more reviews just to kind of get a consensus of what people because all the I've seen about maybe two or three of them so far. What I like about fan reviews is they're able to kind of speak with more passion and freedom than a lot of these professional reviewers like IGN, for example. It's really interesting how for a lot of movies, I'm um I'm more receptive to like not believing a review. And what I mean by that is I don't dispute that someone might have seen a movie and not like it, but I guess I'll put it this way. I am more objective and much more open to like, hey, look, regardless of what you think of this game, the consensus about it is that it's not good. I'm more likely to do that if it's a game than a film because I generally think the criticisms of games are more fair than the ones that you see of films or shows a lot of times. Like I think when people review games, they actually focus on the most important thing, which is gameplay. And even if there are some elements down like, graphics, stuff like that, they're still less likely to get caught up on prioritizing that as far as like nitpicking over stuff. I'm trying to go a way to explain it, but it's just a thing where I think in general criticisms of games tend to be more fair than of films or shows, if that makes any sense. So I'm more likely to listen to game reviews just from a consensus of people than movie reviews, movie or show reviews, I should say. That game's roster is huge. It's got all the what was it, the Konoha 11, Hokages, the the different like I guess mentors for the Kanoa 11. And even with the Kanoa 11, it has like it had or actually with the Konoha, like the main cast of Konoha characters, which is like 12 of them. It has their part one and part two designs as separate characters. It has all of the Akatsuki members playable except for Zetsu. So that's like 9 out of 10. Apparently it's got the sound 4 as well. So I'm really that's a nice roster. That roster just looks really good. Like I probably could only name maybe 10 characters they could have added after that. Like it's really, really large. So yeah, I think I might I'll probably get it after the stream's over. Just as the more I'm thinking about it. And it's a still even though it's been out for 6 years, a relatively popular game because people are like I guess the thing Naruto is not like Dragon Ball video game wise in the sense that Dragon Ball usually gets a new major mu- multiplayer type game every couple of years. Like there are a lot of people that play both Fighters and Universe too. With Naruto, the only multiplayer games that like fans of that series really have that have come out in the last again like 6 years is either Ultimate Ninja Storm 4, because people are not gonna be playing the third one if the fourth one's around. They always upgrade to the newest model. Or Shinobi Striker, which is a game that I want to learn more about, but you know, I'm still debating getting because I don't know. I just it doesn't seem as what's the way of putting it as content filled. See, like the reason I like a lot of these fighting games is that when I was a kid, I could play them, and I can still do this now. I like they were so fun to me that I could just play them by myself without, you know, any like online stuff. Like I just enjoyed the mechanics of the game so much that I would have like hours of just I pick this random character and I fight against this person. Um with a lot of the like current stuff, it really is geared toward interacting with other teams of people, and I'm when I get a new game I'm always kind of reluctant to play online, so I feel like I've got, you know, like I have some basic understand like I still have not played a single match online of fighters, um because I really do want to, if that ever becomes something I'm interested in doing, feel confident uh as a player of the game, and that can be accomplished by, you know, like fighting the computer on hard and stuff like that. But you know what I'm saying, it's one of those things where I try to take my time with it because I'd rather only come online and start trying to, you know, play against other players if I feel very comfortable with my skill level in the game. So I don't know. I don't know if that made any sense, but that's just my reasoning. But I generally am okay with fighting games that have the larger rosters because there's like in my mind a lot of hypothetical matchups that either never happened in the show or I want to recreate in the game. And those alone make me like want to just play the game for some long period of time. Man, I remember the Tenkaichi 3 days, all the matchups I would have on there. I mean, with Shinobi Striker, I am interested in their character customization. You can make your own character and have them join the team of some established ones. But I also am kind of reluctant to get it because it just seems like it's really bare bones in terms of its content. Like Xuniverse 2, for all of its faults, and it does have some, is a game that just it's like every year it gets an expansion pack or it gets boosted in some major way. this is a game that has 40 something characters that granted you have to buy from DLC, but are, have been added to the game, almost 50 characters that have been added since it came out. And each time they add a new character, usually they come with like two or several parallel quests. So it's not like you're just playing as this character in some versus mode. They have specific missions that they want you to either participate with the character in or go through the game with them in. It's really, and that's why I said I really like, even though it's not my favorite Dragon Ball game, I really enjoy Xenoverse 2 for the fact that it's a game where I don't think I'll ever put it down and just not play anymore. Like after I beat Kakarot, there was effectively nothing more for me to do, like nothing fun for me to do anymore. You bring back these old enemies, and then you can only fight them as Goku, or that I explained that garbage, that BS mechanic. But you get what I'm saying? That like Xenoverse 2 has so much stuff in it that it's really something I just can't put down. And I do think that a lot that's part of what determines a good game. It's not the only thing, but it's like a game like Legacy of Goku 2, for example, it's a RPG, pretty straightforward. You level grind to beat bosses and whatnot. And I may have beaten that game more times than possibly any other game that I've ever had. I mean, I beat it a lot. But I would always come back every couple of years and play it again, even though I've beaten it, simply because it was fun. It was fun to level grind. It was fun to like basically be able to control the difficulty of the game as far as like they have this one door where you can punch an enemy through for like level 40 Goku. And you can start doing that with like characters who are in like their tens or whatever. So they can get a whole bunch of experience from just wailing on some enemy that's way stronger than they are. So it's like really easy level grind spot. But the point is, even if a game like that is old at this point and has less content than Kakarot, it's still a much more fun game because it's not hard to level up. And it's a very simplistic and enjoyable experience where I felt rewarded for being able to do certain stuff. I remember I actually explained to people that part of the reason I liked Legacy of Goku 2 more than Boost Fury is because I felt as if the second one is significantly harder than the third one. In the second one, they have this mechanic, and it's hard to explain this stuff, but like when you punch an enemy, let's say they hit against the wall, they will bounce off the wall. Like you hit them, and then they're like set flying in the other direction as a purposeful way of the game to allow the enemy to not be stuck in some never-ending flurry of punches. And usually you can still do things to them with like a key blast or something. But the idea is that this is a purposeful choice by the developers so that you have like some way of like having to show you can keep up combos and whatnot. In the case of Boost Fury, like every enemy was just you hit them first, and then you get them up against the wall, and they keep doing this. And the only thing enemies would defend themselves with was like where they would block your attack. But it's like if you just keep punching and punching, they're gonna break out of that eventually. So it's so interesting how like with Legacy Goku 2, there were multiple points where I just got stuck because of how like the difficulty for it was. Um, but with Boo's Fury, it was like I never had trouble with it. Even when I was a kid, there was just nothing there. Because that it's so funny with Legacy Goku 2. Like my memories of that game are so vivid. I remember the first time I got stuck was when you fight Android 19 with Vegeta. And I got stuck because the 19 and 20 are the hardest bosses in that game, in my opinion, because when you hit them with a key blast, they absorb it and get back more health. And key blasts are usually a way to do damage from a distance. The only two bosses that are like that out of any of them. So that's one of the problems I had. Um, that was the first time. Then there was that egg thing, which I didn't get stuck on that at all, surprisingly, because I recognized that there was like a pattern for how the robots were walking. Then there was that thing with the with what was it, Vinny's you go in his like in the in the forest and have to turn off his music to get to the generator, and I never could it took so long for me to figure out what the combination was. Like to this day, I still remember pieces of it. Like when I ever I replay games, like okay, I know the red one is off and then the black one's on. Mm, 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 mm. That theme is still stuck in my head. Seriously, that was a fun game. I wish more series had RPGs like that. Like I said before, if they did a Kakarot style game for Naruto, and it's the only real difference is like in this hypothetical game, it's much easier to like level grind. I would really be more like excited for because I think the basic play style of that game is pretty good. It's just that it's retelling a story that we've all played through and seen. Sometimes it really feels like 100 times, and it tries to think it's interesting because it adds some bare bones stuff. Oh, look at launch. Oh, look at Nam. It's like with Naruto, even if like that's the story of that series is not as well known to people, and even if it gets retold, it's usually in fighting games. So being able to actually play through it in real time, I think would be a welcome experience by fans of it to have like an RPG game where you can like go from I think what was it, Land of Waves to either the end of part one, the end of part two. Um, I think a lot of people would really like, and I think it would sell very well. So that's just my stance. Oh, Akatsuki Merchant finally showed up. I've been waiting for him. Yeah, I was saying I was thinking of getting Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 because I've been hearing a lot of good things about it, and I played the third one years ago, and I just kind of was remembering that there has basically been no real Naruto games since that game came out besides Shinobi Striker. So I'm contemplating getting it. Mm. I was talking about how huge that the roster of that game is, where it's like all the Hokages, pretty much all the Akatsuki members except for Zetsu. Um, he's got that floating broth that I can't stand, Kaguya, that ruined the worst final villain of any series I've ever seen. I don't know. I really am like curious with Shinobi Striker because I always like games where you can make your own character and customize them. But every time somebody talks about that game, they always mention how little content it has. Like, oh, in this game, you can fight with a team of three other people against other teams. Kaguya was so poorly written into the story. Well, you know what the reason was? Kishimoto wrote Madara as being like so invincible that he didn't figure out a way ahead of time as to how he was going to have him be defeated. So basically, one villain has to save the heroes from another, like indirectly, because she's not helping them, but she's like taking his spot. But yeah, Madara is easily in my top 10 favorite Naruto characters because the level of foreshadowing that he had in that story um was like off the charts. I mean, we see him as the damn statue that Sasuke is standing on in the final battle of part 1. And throughout all of Shippuden, he's mentioned, and people think that Toby slash Obito is him, and not really. Like there are very few shonen like antagonists that get built up as much as he did. And from the second he shows up, he's smashing people. He was a really strong villain, and it just I just hated that like all that build up to get sidelined for a floating broad that came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I just hated that that was done in that manner. Like if you ask me what my favorite Naruto villain is, it would easily be Madara. The only two that come close are Orochimaru and Itachi. But all that foreshadowing, all that build up, and that's how he went out. This one person said they're gonna bring him back for Boruto at the end and have him just to wipe out everybody. That would be nice. he can he can show he was the true antagonist. Like I was more immersed in her character when she was an urban legend figure that was ruined when Zetsu pulled a retcon. Oh, these writers love retcons. Remember how the fusion dance was a permanent thing that you could never get out of until Super revealed that that's only the case if you're Kai's. That was one of the worst reveals I've ever seen. It's like you just took away any possible stakes that using these damn earrings would ever bring. But the real reason they did it is because there's apparently some kind of mandate that Goku has to appear in every single episode of Super, and having him fuse in some permanent thing will mess that up. So that's the real reason that happened. By the way, speaking of episodes, somebody actually went through. So like Shippuden has 500 episodes, right? And like a lot of the fillers are all over the place. Somebody went through and counted the characters who appear the most often. This was shocking to me. The only so Naruto and Sakura, according to this person that went through, because I haven't seen Shippuden in its entirety whatsoever, but according to this person, Naruto and Sakura are the only characters who appear in most episodes of that show. Like, I'm really curious to see how true that is. And I don't think they're lying either, because if you remember, and it might have been a while since you've seen the show, Akatsuki Merch, but like a lot of those fillers will take place, like let's say they're in part one or in some other like time period, and you just won't see anybody from the main cast at all. Like that's really crazy to me. Okay, Shippuden is 500 episodes. Naruto is in 369 of them. Sakura is in 276. Kakashi's in 240. Everybody's favorite I'm over being a good guy character. Sasuke is in 169. Tsunade is in 160. Shikamaru is in 143. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I find that extremely interesting that even like the supposed main characters barely show up in their own damn show. Oh man. You know, I remember I said before that my favorite parts of Naruto are when Sasuke isn't around, but like reading this actually makes me want to go watch Shippuden like all the way through and see how little of it he's actually in. Because I remember he's not in the first arc. Um There are a whole bunch of like segments in part one that he's not around, like this really continuous period where he just appears for a little bit and then vanishes again. But I actually am like really curious to see how true that list is. And like I said, I've done lists like that before. Like I remember when the Future Trunks arc was going on, I did a list where I just kind of like went through the major characters and was like, wow, in this 20 episode arc, Gohan is only in 4 episodes or three, I think it was. Either three or four. Yeah, it was three because I remember I said that Piccolo and Krillin both appear twice as much as he does. And then, like Goku, Vegeta, Whis, they're in basically all of them, along with Future Trunks. That's really kind of crazy to think about. Like, they just, you went from being the supposed one of the main protagonists of Z to like being a complete supporting character in Super NGT. That's a heck of a fall from grace. By the way, I was somebody made a similar thing for the Boruto manga, where they went through and counted the characters who appear in the most chapters. And the three original series characters that we see the most, you can guess who two of them are: Naruto and Sasuke, and Shikamaru. And I was really surprised by that because, like I, I'm just gonna say this. I like Hinata. I think she's a nice character. Got a pretty cool set of powers. But it's so irritating to me that in a series where she is the mother of the titular character, the titular character name is whose name who is the name of the series. She has only been in, according to that post, like 9 or 10 chapters out of the 70 something in Boruto, and that's really pathetic because like this is her. I always tell you that like the reason I don't enjoy Boruto is because I feel based off of the stuff I've read that it either retreads things from Naruto and the original stuff it does isn't that great, like the ninjas from space, for example. But I'm telling you, sometimes I get frustrated with stories because there's like so much potential that they have, and they just squander it. Like, what does everybody remember about Naruto in part one? He didn't have parents or some stable environment of adults that cared about him that were related to him. Boruto has his father as the Hokage. He has his mother who's like apparently and like we don't we hardly get to see her interact with him at all. She's like almost a second a supporting character or like third rate character in her son's story, and it drives me nuts. Like because if you remember in the original manga, she's not that important there either. Like somebody pointed out, she's in like what 40 chapters out of the 700. She's a popular character as far as like she's more popular than probably anyone who's not from Team 7. Um besides maybe like like Shikamaru and Gar, like the obvious ones, but it really just drives me crazy that her child is the like titular, the title character of that series, and we don't even get to see her at all. And like I said, Boruto is so irritating because that's an area where it could do something different, and I'd have nothing but praise. I say yes, we get to see our main character interact with his mom, and like maybe they train together because she has powers as well. This would be really cool. We've never seen anything like this before, and we don't get it. I told you, man, these writers they just fail. They fail in every degree. I really would like somebody to go through the Naruto manga and just count how many chapters each character is in, and just like it'll just show you how minor Hinata is. And it's so sad because like I don't say that as someone who dislikes that character or any of the other ones. Just like they had so many and they just don't do anything with them. And like they're popular in spite of how little they're used is the funny part. I only read one chapter like over the last 6 years, ever since they did that stupid movie recap. I've only read one chapter of Boruto, and it was about some girl that it was like the second to last newest one. It was some girl who had the power to hear conversations that were away from her, and she had like a crush on I think it was Kawaki or something. And I just want to explain like why the characters are idiots. So Shikamaru tells them this, and they're like, "Oh, she's probably listening to us right now." I was thinking to myself, like, if you truly believe she's ear hustling, that she has this like really incredible power to be able to hear conversations about her or anywhere else from great distances away, why don't you write it down? Why don't you on a piece of paper go, hey, Boruto, there's this new villain that she can hear our conversations no matter where she is, and that's why I'm writing this to you, and don't say anything. I don't know, it just seems really weird to me. Like you would talk about someone who can hear you when you can just I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. I can only hope that since Kishimoto is returning to writing, um, now that he like with not returning to Boruto, but like returning to writing a monthly manga since for the first time since Naruto ended. I can only hope that he course corrects and it just does interesting stuff, man. Like I don't know. I Everybody always says if you want an older character use you want nostalgia. It's like I'd rather they use Rock Lee than his son because I don't know his son. And I know they're not going to do an arc where they develop their relationship. So it's like pick your poison, you know what I mean? Oh man. Every time I get a YouTube notification, I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my God, someone subscribed, somebody left a comment. No, it's just them notifying you that you made a stream. Mm. I always find chapter and episode counts to be really interesting because I think I said before that like screen time to me denotes how important the character is. Um, More so than what is stated. Like I always felt as if for as much as they hype him up, Sasuke is just a supporting character. Like he's a main one in the sense that the plot revolves a lot around him. But he, in terms of how often we see him, I would call him a supporting character. I don't know. It just seems like every time these series like get put in some scenario where they're going to go on indefinitely, you have people like, I want new characters, new characters, new characters. Like, I'm sorry, but the new villains they made are not as good as the ones we had before. Like every time I go on here, people are talking about how lame they are. So it's and I've always that's the claim I've had before, that just because something is new doesn't mean it's good. Um, Honestly, I would have preferred if we had, and I usually don't say honestly, but I really would have preferred if they did another Naruto series. I would have had liked one set in between part one and part two, just because a lot of stuff happens in that 2 years that's never really been explained or furthered in any way. You had Neji become a Jonin. He went from two ranks up to being like the highest person in the whole Konoha 11. You had Gara go from being the feared monster of his village to their Kage. There's a whole bunch of stuff that just never gets expanded on, and it's really lame. And I think if they did a midquel between part one and part two, not only would their story naturally have a sense of direction because they know where they're going, but it would also be interesting to have a sequence of events where we can see other characters also that maybe didn't get as much screen time in Shippuden as we would have liked, getting more to do in this like interquel than in the following series. I always said before, the Akatsuki have so much backstory, like as a group, that they could have their own manga, like just a manga that's about them, and it could be like set, let's say a year before part one happens, right? And for each member, maybe it could be 20 volumes or something. You get like different flashbacks of their past. Like I said, Naruto has a whole bunch of characters, and it just doesn't use a lot of them the way I think it should. But I guess it's a testament to a story if the characters are so likable on both the villainous and good side that you want to see more of them. People really act like you're crazy if you want like more from a shonen series. Like, you want this female character that everybody thinks is so great to actually have a one-on-one fight for the first time in 500 chapters. What's wrong with you? Like, man, I just want them to be more involved with the story. At least if I play Ultimate Ninja Storm, I can have Rock Lee fight Sasori, which I think should have happened in the proper story. There are so many games that have openings where it's like Gotenks versus Kid Buu, and I always like that because they're like both overpowered children-esque. Like Gotenks is a kid, but Super Buu is like old as dirt. Um, like they you get two small, extremely powerful warriors like duking it out. And I always thought that was so cool looking, and yet in the series they never even encounter each other. So it was really lame. Just like just how, in terms of how a lot of times I'll put up matchups just because I wish they happened in the actual show, and it's like the game is the closest I can come to seeing it, you know, occur. Man, the Akatsuki are they were such a frustrating organization. All that build up during part one, and then most of the members that show up in part two get killed off after like one or two appearances. And you would think for a series that has 500 chapters, they would last relatively long, but like from the time the first arc of Shippuden starts, you start getting them killed off. Oh, but they come back with whatever the reincarnation jutsu is called. Yeah, but it's like at that point it's too little, too late, because it's like when they were by themselves, there was or they had a partner, two of them, there was a higher chance they would get character development because there are only two of them there. When they start showing up in groups of like four and five, it's harder to develop all of them, because you have to develop them on top of developing the protagonist, which makes it even more excruciating. I was still laughing at Hidan being like this evil, creepy villain who like does damage to himself to do damage to you once he gets you inside of his hex, his little circle of judgment. And it's crazy how, like, with the villain that is that insane, you would think, oh man, that he's gonna recur, he's gonna be I was like, this was pointed out in the Naruto wiki. He's the only member of the Akatsuki who never meets Naruto. That's really crazy. Like you matter so little, even though you're one of the few villains that actually killed somebody off, like a recurring character we saw for a long time. You still like matter so little that you didn't even meet the main character. He's like the Goldo of the Akatsuki because Goldo didn't meet Goku. He was only Ginyu Force member didn't meet him. That's really crazy. It's kind of funny how many Dragon Ball villains there are in Z that like never met Goku. Let's see there. Zarbon, Dodoria, Goldo. You're gonna count a pool in there as well, although he didn't really meet anybody from the good guys team. 17. Super fixed that, but still. Wow. It's really, really crazy. I don't know. I always felt like a lot of stories just they don't, and I don't believe a lot of these writers because I know that Kishimoto always wanted to end it with Naruto versus Sasuke, but as far as like the journey to getting there, I didn't think it was as concrete as it could have been. Mm. So many noises, man. It's a really unfortunate thing. What happened to Akatsuki Merchant? Did he retire for the day? Did he say he's finished? He's done. He has nothing else to say. The only fight Naruto that ain't real emotional way was Naruto versus Pain. I mean, I guess if you want to say that, although I still think the best fight in the whole show is probably Gara versus Rock Lee, because that's literally the first time we see Gara like start to lose his composure, and we get like the backstory of Lee with the struggles he had with being like only in taijutsu. So I'm gonna have to dispute that one. Oh yeah, well I told you part one is much more character focused and character driven than part two is. Part two is just like a story that gets ahead of its own characters most of the time. I'd also say that this like as much as I don't like him, the Sasuke versus Itachi fight had emotional weight as well. Um, Simply because that fight was foreshadowed since the series started. There is one person I want to kill. You remember when he was talking to Kakashi and like he wouldn't even say who that was, but if you rewatch it, you know who it is. So if there's one other fight in Shippuden I think had emotional weight, it was Sasuke versus Itachi. Like damn near no other fight in the whole series was as alluded to and foreshadowed as that one was. This guy was like, "How can you like Itachi but not like Sasuke?" I said, "Well, it's pretty simple. The narrative of the series doesn't try to make me believe he's a good guy or that I should feel sorry for him or that I should root for him. You know, it's The narrative treats him like a villain because what he did was villainous. Sure, his motivations are later revealed to be more complex than what we initially knew, but he's. I like him because he's not. It's not told to me that he's this amazingly good guy who I should feel sympathy for. He's someone who did something, and we find out more about it later on, but it still is like not considered a good thing, and we're not told to like root for him. Do I remember when Shippuden was first coming out in this must have been like 2008. Well, no. It's like 2007 because I remember that there was like a house I lived at before that I like that was the year I moved from over there. But I remember like going to one of the Japanese import stores that was in my state, and they had like Naruto with the black coat on, they had Sakura with the longer legs and whatnot, larger chest, and they had Deidara. And I remember I was like so confused, like, why does he have a hand? Why does he have a tongue coming out of his hand? Just weird. By the way, I love how we were talking about how like Nova Shenron, like Ice Shenron is bootleg Nova Shenron. A lot of people said Deidara was like gender swapped version of Eno because they both have the blonde hair where like one where, like like eyes is covered. It's hard to argue against that. It really is. No, I know you didn't like the idea of having a name change from Akatsuki Merchant to Madara Merchant. There was some video where people were getting trolled on like Twitch streams with Madara's voice actor, like saying lines from Boruto from Shippuden. I really like the build up to Sasuke versus Itachi. Yeah, it's the only fight, but like with an Akatsuki member that like that has been built up since part one. So it was really cathartic to see that. And I'm saying that someone doesn't even like Sasuke. I was like, hey, this actually was a payoff. But there were just so many like fights we could have had that we never got. Like I told you, I wanted Rock Lee versus Sasori because they both move really fast. Oh man. I remember when I was a kid, I was so confused by pain. I was like, so it's a guy in a suit of other people. They're all orange. It's so funny how with a lot of these shows, like the redheads in real life have hair that's either red or it's like uh an orange looking red or whatever. But in these different shows, they have like actual like crimson red hair for a lot of characters. So you'll have to call someone who has what would be considered red hair in real life, like orange hair. But also, I also like the rivalry between Kazami and my guy. Um, it will always be one of the best rivalries in the series. Well, Guy's one of the only characters from part one that actually has a bigger role in part two. Like he's one of the few subversions of the like as the shonen goes on, you get less to do. He gets his own Akatsuki member to have a rivalry with. He gets to like hit on Madara. So he really is one like I don't know. It's so weird that like they spent so much time building up Lee during part one, but then his mentor is the one that gets more to do. I like that that's something. Like just the more I think about it, it surprises me. Really crazy. Let me see what this other thing is. No, the Sasuke Itachi fight was really nice due to the build up and the actual way it was going. The only issue I had was that illness that Itachi had because as far as I can remember when he showed up in part 1 was only 2 years ago he didn't have the illness. I don't know when he contracted it. Maybe there's some filler that explains it, but that to me that always felt like it came out of nowhere and it was just a handicap for him to have in that fight, like as opposed to just making them be even with each other. It's like, hey, we have no other way for Sasuke to look imposing. Let's have his brother have a illness that he's been like battling in secret. Mm. Yeah, it's just really sad, man. That so many good characters and so little development. Yeah, I got called my friend at like almost 12 o'clock last night. Always have to remind myself nobody goes to sleep early on the weekend. Yeah, I was just walking around, just talking about just a lot of the really hectic and awful stuff that's happened over the period of the last several weeks. Let's see what this thing is. Oh man. This person asked me what's the next DLC for Xenoverse. They're gonna do some stuff for superhero. They already have the Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 coming. So I think for the second one, they're probably gonna put in Orange Piccolo and Beast Gohan, and then we'll have pretty much everything from that film that actually matters. Oh, Megumi has decided to show up. He has decided to emerge at last from his hiatus. He has decided to make himself known. I don't know. We were earlier we were discussing like some of the stuff on Steam and kind of how ridiculous some prices on there can be. Um, and I was just like contemplating the game to get, but I still wasn't entirely sure. Just like weighing the pros and cons or whatever. Then we got into talking about Shippuden, the actual series, and this thing this person on Reddit did where they counted the number of episodes and like which character appeared the most, which I thought was really interesting because it takes a lot of dedication to like watch a show that long and count this one is in that one, this one is in that one. He did some stuff I thought was really cool. And for just from like the standpoint of like, wow, this person actually did this. That requires a lot of effort on their part. Um, it's that was pretty much the crux of what the conversation was about. I still think Kankuro and Tamari should have been the ones to go after Didera. Yeah, I don't quite understand why they were not involved in his final defeat. He was responsible for the kidnapping of their brother. It's so I said there's a lot of like wasted opportunities in terms of like character usage that I guess just never occurred to Kishimoto. Like I still have the interview where he said that he wanted Rock Lee to do more in part two, but he just never could find the time. And it's like you had five, what is it, like 400 something chapters to make him do something, and you didn't. Really? How many more do you need? 500, 600, 700? It's weird too because it's like in part one he gave him what, three fights, and he like part two is twice as long. He couldn't figure out. I don't. I think it's all BS. Whatever. Doesn't Steam usually have sale of reduced price for the games they have on there? Sometimes, and believe me, it always is by random. So, just a good example, I got the real version of Dead by Daylight about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago for like $20. I go on there to last night, and now it's like $7. It's like I wish somebody had told me they were going to do this sale. You'll be surprised how many games have been out for like 2, 3, 4 years, and they're still going for 59.99. I don't know. I just feel like stuff shouldn't cost as much. Like my stance is if you when you get like a DVD of something, it's a physical copy that you can just you own, you do whatever you want with it. But I'm basically being asked to pay the same as retail price for what is essentially a legalized ROM of the game, like first you have to buy the computer to play it on, then you have to buy the game. Then when you get the game, you have to download it, make sure you have enough space. So I said it's just annoying. I think anytime you have non-physical media, it shouldn't cost as much as it would to buy a DVD. Like if I go on the Apple, was it Apple TV? They sell movies on there for sometimes 15 or 17 or $18. I'm like, I'm why do I have to pay the price of that you would pay for getting a DVD? And sometimes DVD would be even cheaper to watch this movie whenever I'd like. Even if they didn't fight Diderot, they could have aided in talking him down. Yeah, they could have had some role. That's what I'm saying. Like there could have been some for them to do. It just would make them out of any of the Akatsuki members. It would make the most sense for them to fight him, in my view, because again, he had kidnapped their brother. But if they're just involved, period, I would have been content. Well, when it comes to prices on game media, retro comes into mind, and the prices can get really out of control, especially in physical retro media. Well, I understand with a lot of like older games, people will sell those like in mint condition for 70, 80, $90. Like I remember with Rage and Blast 2, it was like that for a long time where people were selling that game for $100, like still wrapped up from 12 years ago. But what I'm conveying to you is it doesn't make sense to me to have a non-physical copy of either a movie or a game sell for a price that is comparable to what you would pay if you bought a physical copy. Remember, if you get a physical, if like let's say you get a PS5 game, right? You can stick that in any PS5 across the nation and play that game. All you do is put the DVD in there, and then there you go. With Steam, you have to have a computer, and you have to log in your account. Then you have to download the game and wait for that to finish downloading. Depending on how long how big it is, it might take a while. Like it would just be easier to just have a DVD, and it's like they make it to where it costs just as much to have a DVD as it does to like even be able to play it on the computer at all. Like I don't know, I just think it's weird. Especially when movies are the same. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, there's no way a movie that you get on your again on like Apple TV or something should cost more than maybe like $10 because you don't have a physical copy. This is just something you watch on this particular part of like a phone or something. Oh, you can watch from any device. Like, okay, I guess that's cool, but it shouldn't cost the same amount as having a physical copy. I definitely agree with you there. That's why I mostly wait for sales for stuff I want that is digital. It just gets on my nerves. I'm like, you guys really are sitting here and trying to price gouge me over something I won't even be able to hold in my hand physically. Like I really miss the good old days of like the early 2000s, or just like that period where there was no DLC, there was no streaming services. You played something, you got something, physical, and then you had it forever, or you get rid of it. I just miss physical media. Because I remember they were putting manga volumes on Kindle, and I was like, I like the actual physical book, like being able to turn the pages and admire the art of whoever the given artist is. I'm just saying, I don't like to just like have everything just in this phone. Like I don't know. I just prefer physical media. I'll put it that way. So whenever that costs more, I'm usually less peeved about buying it. Because again, like you said, it's typically the older games that cost more when it comes to physical media. So like if you get something new and it's $60 and you go on Steam and it's $60, you might prefer getting the physical copy because at least you have it like with you and it's in your hand and it's not some file on some computer. Stuff is really irritating. Isn't it possible to lose digital stuff of as well? Like if the site goes down or something gets corrupted? Yeah. Um, I'm not even joking. Like I know that what's it, torrenting movies is illegal, but that's one of the reasons I like physical copies because sometimes like maybe you'll lose something, but it's a lot safer to have a physical copy than like, oh, I have it on this one website. Now the website is down, so I can't access it anymore. Did you at a certain point you just have to end up getting like a hard drive and just getting copies of that stuff and sticking it on there. Either that or again getting like the physical copy of the DVD because this online stuff isn't going to cut it. DLC is the worst thing that happened to video games. It allows game studios to get away with releasing unfinished games while charging people for content that should have been in the game in the first place. Told you, Fighters is the perfect example. That game came out with a terrible roster of 21 characters. Now it's got 41, and each character cost about $5 on Steam, which means that if you bought the game at its base price of $59.99 and you proceeded to buy all of the characters, you would be spending about $180. And that's not even counting how much it costs to get the damn device to play the game on. It's really sad. Like Megumi was talking about microtransactions, but it should say something when the DLC ends up costing more than the game did, like altogether. I tell you, the first time I ever got a whiff of that garbage was when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out, and I was so excited because the second one came out like what was that, like over 10 years before? You know, like a long time had passed since there been a sequel, right? So I was playing it, having fun, and then it's like 2 3 months later, presenting to you Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the Ultimate Edition, and it has 10 more characters. And if you take your copy back, you can get a discount. It's like, so wait a second. I'm supposed to buy the same game with this many new characters added in, but then like return the copy I received before so I can get a discount on the game that came out several months later that's actually finished. Like, so either way, you end up having to pay more for. It's just weird, man. Like that was one of the earliest because that game came out when I was in like sixth grade, seventh grade. That was one of the first examples to me of like shady stuff that these gaming companies do. Like really stupid, screw the customer over motives and like that type of thing. While I do agree about the DLC being a huge hindrance in gaming, but in some rare cases, there's some DLC that actually can enhance the content of a game and are worth the price, like new maps, more stories, etc. Well, the issue I have with it, and I always use Xenoverse 2 as a good example. That game has had over, and this is not hyperbole, over a dozen DLC packs. Sometimes I go to the Steam store, I have to remind myself that I get, and it has like, it tells you like which ones you have. Like I have to like, okay, this one has who again? That one has who again? Because there's so much of it. And it's like, this game's been out again for 6 years. At a certain point, you've got to make another damn game, or it looks like you are artificially expanding the lifespan of the second game instead of making the third one because you know that if you have to make a third one, all the DLC is going to be available at the start. And then people are going to be like, well, what's the point of getting all this DLC for the second if I can just go buy the third one that has all of it there to begin with? So again, DLC by itself is not like obnoxious, but when the DLC makes it like when so much of it comes out for a game that just for whatever reason they can't make a sequel to, can't as in they don't want to, that's where it starts to become like a hindrance because they're purposely limiting making a follow-up so that they can keep squeezing pennies out of you. Hey Megumi, you want Xenoverse 3? How about instead of paying $60 for a new game with 40 new characters, you pay 120 for 40 characters, some more maps, and some costumes that you don't even have unlocked at the start of the game. You have to play through the same quest to get pieces of over and over. They are so scummy. Like that's insane. Told you, don't be surprised if it's 2026 and we're getting DLC pack 30 or something. The DLC can be used in a bad way, charging people extra money for a game they already bought. And I told you, some of the stuff they add should have been there in the first damn place. Like Fighters is the only game I have ever seen out of any game in the whole Dragon Ball franchise going all the way back to the NES where you have to buy first like base form Goku, regular Goku. You can't play as, you have to buy. That's nuts. I've never seen a single other game in that whole series where you have to buy Goku separately, like base form Goku. And you know why he's DLC? Because they were too lazy. They knew that they could squeeze some more pennies out of players by just changing a character model and giving him some black hair and throwing on whatever new quote unquote move set that he has. That's the reason this stuff is done. They got me. They're talking about pay $5 to get Videl as DLC. It's like I've never seen any other Dragon Ball game where you have to like get Videl as DLC. Like you go to Budokai Tenkaichi Rage and Blast. She's there. You can unlock her in the game. You don't have to go and spend extra money for her. Are you serious? Oh, you have to try. You have to pay to play Goku in his base. That's what. Same thing with Vegeta, dude. Like, listen, this isn't. We're not talking about Broly, Janemba. I know you love him, but like, Baby, who is DLC by the way. Um, we're talking about like, do you realize the first image a lot of people have when they think of Dragon Ball, if it's not Super Saiyan Goku, it's regular Goku. Regular Goku and regular Vegeta, regular black haired Goku Vegeta, and you have to pay for them separately from the game. That's ridiculous. That game has so many Gokus and it's not even funny. GT Goku, and it's not Super Saiyan 4 Goku, it's Kid Goku. Base form Goku, Super Saiyan Goku, Blue Goku, Ultra Instinct Goku, Goku Black, if you want to count him, even though they're a separate character, whatever. They'll give you 5 Gokus before they give you Kid Gohan. But whatever. All of this stuff is locked behind a paywall. What the hell? And these are regular characters in the original cast of the show. You've seen Sonic X. Are you're familiar with Sonic? Imagine they made a Sonic fighting game where like you play as Super Sonic and he's like they have some story as to why he's mostly just Super Sonic for the story. And it's like, oh, you want to play as regular Sonic and Shadow? Just pay some DLC for some DLC. You don't think you get where that would be weird, right? It's like these are their regular appearances. That's ridiculous. It goes without me saying, but that's really crazy. Like I said, DLC is supposed to be something that enhances the game. It's not meant to be this thing where you take like basic characters. I still will contend that Videl is a basic character. Every other fighting game in this series from the last 20 years has had her as part of its base roster. Like since Budokai 2, Every game has her in it as someone that's just there. You don't have to pay for her out of the game. You don't have to go and spend $5 just to get this. Like, it's weird. Yeah, that's really scummy. I still can't believe they actually want you to pay separately from the game for regular form Goku and Vegeta. I'm like, I'm still just looking at that thing on Steam. Like, they want $5 for base Goku. That first time I've ever seen something like that. Alternatively, why couldn't she just be unlocked with the game instead of being behind a paywall? Because they rushed it. They rushed the game to come out in 2018 because they have to make a new Dragon Ball game every year. And they knew that instead of just putting out your crappy roster first game and then making a sequel in like 3, 4 years that has, a roster of like 50, 60 people. Oh no, we'll just make we'll just start sticking characters in here and have you pay for them. Mm. Well, we disagree strongly on that thing you said last time about it being the worst one. Like, I'm sorry if you played through some of the sludge that I've had to experience that had the Dragon Ball title on it, you would know why I can't get behind a statement like that. You think I'm playing? If you go through every fighting game since the second Budokai, which is like 20 years ago, she was play like you can unlock her, and then that was it. You didn't have to buy her separately. The only characters from the Buu saga you can count on to be playable in most games like it's a pretty small group. It's the three forms of Buu, Goten, Trunks, and Videl, and then like sometimes Mr. Satan, which is really not that big a group of characters. That's like what, seven, eight. Oh, and Gotenks. That's a fusion, so it's like whatever. Man, I never thought I'd see a day where I'd have to pay separately to get Goku, to get regular Goku in the game. I would love for Sega to make a Sonic game where you have to like DLC to buy regular Sonic and Shadow as playable character. People be like losing their minds, like, what is this? I remember when Super Smash Flash was a thing. Um, we would always say like, when are Shadow and Vegeta coming? That's the game where like you could play as Goku and Ichigo and all and like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. When are Shadow and Vegeta coming? And we would just keep like naming different like parallel characters together. When are Gohan and Amy coming? When are Tien and Vector coming? When are Shiatsu and Charmy coming? When are Yamcha and SBO coming? When are Frieza and Eggman coming? When are Cell and Metal Sonic coming? When are Boo and Chaos coming? When are Goku Black and Memphilis coming? Oh, that was my favorite joke ever because like you were just naming all the different characters that have like something in common with each other. And like I don't know, I just always thought that was funny, like because it really was always just when are Shadow and Vegeta coming, and then it got expanded to include all these other ones. A when are Mighty and Launch coming? No, if they made a Sonic game where you had to buy DLC to play as base Sonic and Shadow, you would see all kind of videos on this website. What are they doing? Why can't you play? Oh man, that would be a yeah, yeah. Boo and Chaos have the same thing where they have like they're an ancient character who regenerates, right? Who fights like you know what I'm talking about where they have like multiple forms too. Even though Chaos is only really in Sonic Adventure and Battle also as well, it has long been theorized he was going to be playable in Adventure 2 along with Amy and like in the regular story because Shadow already knows how to use Chaos Control, despite like we know he didn't learn this from Eggman or Rouge. So the theory was that Chaos was the one that showed him how to do it, and that like they cut him from the story because of time constraints. I actually remember those times during school. We used to discuss those parallels. There's a lot of them. I told you there was this one guy who, when I said the like when are Amy and Gohan coming thing, he was like really obsessed with trying to figure out if Sonic had a son. Because you know the parallel with Amy and Gohan is they're the third person who's like a hedgehog slash Saiyan. Um, and they both get rescued by Goku slash Sonic and like follow around him or whatever. So, anyways, he was like, look, he's like, oh, so that's a Sonic has to. Let me see if he has a son on like the arc. It's like he's 15. He doesn't have a kid. Are you crazy? Like people get caught up on so much stuff don't matter. I said when they're Mighty and Launch coming because they're both the forgotten character. No, I said Memphilis and Goku Black because they're both someone who like takes the form of like one of the protagonists. Actually, Memphis. No, I'm not. Well, no, because he doesn't possess people. I was going to say that Memphilis and Baby could have been another one, but it's like the same thing of like taking a body that is similar to one of the the main characters. And then, you know, I put Eggman and Freeze together because they're like the most recurring antagonists. Oh, cool. I didn't know that about Chaos. It would have been nice to play as him as a character in yeah. Well, you know, SA2, as much as I really like it, it was a fairly rushed game that underwent several different behind the scenes things. Like, don't forget when that game came out, or was first announced, they only showed footage of the player as Sonic, Eggman, or Knuckles because originally it was supposed to just be those three characters playable. That's why when they did the hero and villain campaign, they stuck Tails in that mecha suit. so so he was like the reskin of Eggman for that part because it was a late edition. And that's one of the reasons why Shadow only has 4 levels. I remember when I was like I must have been maybe God, I think I was I'm not even joking. I must have been like in preschool, like before even kindergarten, like 3 or 4. My dad took me to this gaming store, like some store had a whole bunch of games, and they had Sonic Adventure on one of those like big like arcade-esque devices. And I picked Sonic, or I think he was the only one available to play as. And I remember the first level of the campaign for him is like fighting chaos. And because I didn't know what to do, I was just like running away from and jumping. That's one of my earliest memories of playing a game because it's like like I really had they don't even tell you like how to move or no tutorial. They just thrown in. Yeah, that was a huge disappointment when I found out Tails can only move in that on that mech suit. But you know that's because him, Rouge, and Shadow were late additions to that game. And they wanted like that's why they all have like a move set that is the same as someone from the other side. So Sonic and Shadow play the same. Rouge and Knuckles play the same. Tails and Eggman play the same. You know, that's because they're later additions. No, those mech suit stages were always my least favorite. Because it's like you have the speed stages that are just so fast and you're running around and whatever, and then you get to the part where you're like jumping and you have to blast this and shoot that, and I don't know. I was never into it that much. I guess it's more frustrating because Eggman is not someone who can do any of that, so it makes sense for him to be in the mech suit. Like with Tails in the first adventure, they had him, flying around, and I'm talking about like every other game that you've been able to play as him since that one and before that one, you could move. So yeah, it was really annoying. But yeah, the theory for Adventure 2 was that Amy was supposed to be playable because she has more screen time in the cutscenes for that game than Knuckles, who is playable. Just like with Sonic Unleashed, when that game was first announced, they said that Shadow and Knuckles were going to appear in it, and they didn't. That game is one of the lowest rosters of forget playable characters. Characters even appear in the damn story. I told you ever since like '06, they've been like afraid to make games where you can play as multiple people unless it's like a crossover game or something. It's really sad. Just like I told you that I think I mentioned that Shadow was originally supposed to die in Adventure 2, and like that would be the end of him. And then for Heroes, one of the teams was going to be um, what was it? It was Amy, Cream, and Rouge. Because so there would be like no Gam, no E1, like no Omega or none of that. But then because how popular he was, they brought him back, and he has stayed ever since. I agree in SA1, Tails gameplay was a little insane, but it's because Tails stages were made the same as Sonic stages. They didn't bother truly designing stages that befitting for him. You know what it is, right? Because he's always been like, you go back to the early Genesis days, like you could play as him in the, because they only had like stages. There were no different stages for different characters, but like you could play as him and he would be kind of like the easy mode of the game. It's in terms of being able to fly over stuff, and if you fall off something, you can catch yourself. That was what I always appreciated about that. Like that classic. People hate like Sonic having a bunch of characters, but that classic trio of him, Tails, and Knuckles was solid because they all had different play styles, even if they were on the same levels. Like they were all very different from each other. Well, Sonic Heroes is pretty much the last game that's somewhat well liked by people. Like I'm nostalgic for it. It was the first like console Sonic game I ever played. That actually uses a majority of the cast as people you can play as, and each team has its own difficulty setting. Like the Sonic team is like medium, and then the Rose team is for easy mode, and Team Dark is the hard mode. The only thing I didn't like about the game was the that if you try to use a flying character, you can only play as them with what I'm talking about, right? Where like the only time you can play as one of the flying characters is if they're sitting, they're like they have people underneath them, like holding on to them. I hated that so much. And there's a level, I don't remember if you remember it, but there's a level where there's like a robot that will kidnap members of your team. And it's like this thing where it like has them inside of this thing where they're like hovering around. Um, and if you both of your team members get kidnapped with that and you default to playing as the flying character, that's like the only time in the game where you can play as them without them like being tied up to somebody. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but there's a level where your team members can become unavailable if they get captured by this robot that keeps them in this like floating thing like beneath them. And if your team members who are not the flying one get captured or taken by it, then you can move around as them. Yeah, I know that enemy. It was in the casino. Yeah, yeah. I used to like let that thing get the other two just because I wanted to, because like the game doesn't ever let you play as them just moving around regular. Yeah, I just was like curious about, hey, what do they do when they don't have the thing where they throw, one of the two? Oh, they have a little ring bomb, which they brought back for Sonic Next Gen or Sonic '06. No, I used to always let that enemy capture my teammates because I just wanted to play as the flying character for 2 seconds without having them tied up to the other damn like like strapped to like I don't know. I just that was always my least favorite part of the game. Just like the flying character has to have people on their feet for the whole time you play as them. And it's like a big slap in the face to you because when you use your speed character and your power character, the flying character is on the side. They get into these particular formations, sure, but they, like you don't feel as if you're being, what I'm talking about. Like I just hate having all of them just tied up to each other. Like that's weird. No, that was my favorite stage to go to. You want to play as a flying character, you better let your team get captured. Man, I remember like I said, I played a whole bunch of Sonic games. Like I didn't beat that many of them because for the most part when I played them I was a kid and I didn't really, but like you'd be surprised by like the depth of just how many of those I played. Like I remember when there was some like collection game, I think it was on like the GameCube and I played on the Wii, where they had Sonic R in there. And I remember that stupid Tails doll curse. And I swear, I actually like this is the weirdest thing. This is back when I was like maybe like fifth grade or something. I beat the Tails doll on some stage as part of the curse. And somebody called my house and I answered the number and they didn't even say anything. And it was like right after I won. It was, and I was like, oh, it was the Tails doll. I remember somebody made a review of Sonic R back in the day where they were like, why does this game have only 5 stages? I want more variety. Right, but there's two of them. There's a collection where it's the first 3 games and like what's the name of that one Sonic game? I'm forgetting its name, but it's like a fighting game and there's like the Sonic Labyrinth, which I hate that thing whenever I be. But you get what I'm saying. There's 2 of them. There's one collection that has that stuff on it. Then there's another one that had Sonic R on it. Dude, my favorite thing about that game was like every unlockable character was like a clone version of somebody you already like in this little itty bitty roster of 10 characters. every character you could get was like the bootleg version of one of the ones you already had. Like, oh, you can unlock Metal Sonic or the Tails doll or Mecha Knuckles. Like, what? Let me see what the other two were. That game's roster was. And it's like what I always try to explain is that I don't ask for some because I know back then rosters were smaller, but half of the roster that you unlock is like clones. Like it's the like okay, Metal Sonic I let slide because he's the only one we see. But like notice after that game, you never saw the Tails doll again because it was just a clone. Sonic Gems Collection, Sonic R. Then there is the Sonic, yeah, Mega Collection's the one that had the actual good stuff on it. Oh my god. Let me see here. Where is this thing? Oh man. No, the Mega Collection was one I used to play all the time because it had all the classics on there. You had the Genesis trilogy. You had the. I have to go look again, but I remember just playing that a lot because that was back before I even had like the like ROMs and the ability to play that stuff. The Mega Collection has Sonic 3D Blast, which is one of my favorite games on there. I can't remember the fighting one. I'll look up its title either during the stream or like after it. But I remember there's a fighting game and it's in 3D and it's got Fang and Bark the polar bear and Bean and all these. I remember when Sonic Riders came out and people because Jet is green as well and he's got like a beak. People were like, "Oh, that's Bean. He's back." Nope. I heard people being mad. Why is Sonic on a hoverboard? He should be running. I remember I would purposely like run out of gas to on the board so I could just run normally. But the thing I remember most fondly from that game is probably there's like a opening for it where it's like, I'm gonna hit you, son. And it shows like Tails getting ganged up on by the members of like Jet's team, and then Sonic goes back to help him, which makes them unlikable because they're like all ganging up on one person. That's one game I would go back and probably try to play again because I haven't played in a long time. The Make Collect. Oh, okay, I already read that. I think I played 3D Blast. I'm gonna look up some gameplay of that and see if I remember it. Because I refuse to believe there was any game on that thing and I didn't try at least once. Let me see here. Yeah, I remember this. It's all coming back. I didn't like it as much as the Genesis games, but I definitely liked it more than Sonic Labyrinth. I don't think any of them had Sonic CD on there. Or was the other one Knuckles Chaotix? Yeah, I had I bought Shadow on GameCube and I played it on my Wii. I still can't get over like how it tried it was it's so interesting how that game is so in like a lot of ways it's very ambitious because it wants to do this thing of like you choose the story you could be a hero or a villain um but then it contradicts itself because in games that truly allow you to pick your own path you just have to play through that one path to like understand the story. It's like you have this agent who's got like a red eye and a blue eye. He used to play with Maria. And we don't even find out this guy's name or why he hates Shadow unless you play through one specific version of the story that reveals the backstory for him. And it's just so irritating. It's like if he truly matters to the narrative of this damn game, why couldn't that have been revealed no matter which option I played through? And then they had the thing where it's like kill 40 of this monster and stuff. I hate when they give you like assignments like that in a game such as that one where they want you to take out a number of opponents. I don't think it's as bad of a game as something like '06. But I do understand why people don't like it. Because it's another one of these games that is ambitious, but it's got too little content for that. And a lot of the stuff that they choose to focus on, I think, is unappealing, like having to kill a certain number of enemies just to complete a stage. If you look at any game in this series that's deemed classic or very well liked, you don't have to take like you can just play through the stage, and as long as you get to the end, you're fine. You don't have to like go and stop and uh take out this number of enemies. You know what I'm talking about. As much as I like the game, I do agree with your points on it. Well, look, I would rather play that game again than a lot of like how to explain it. I'd rather play that game again than something like Sonic Labyrinth or Sonic R, one of the other ones. Because it does have some redeeming qualities. Like I think the gameplay is basically like Sonic Heroes to me. Like it reminds me it kind of reminds me of Adventure a little bit in terms of like just the way that Shadow moves and whatnot. So I never was bothered by just playing as him. And there's actually one level, I'm forgetting its name, but it's like in the sky and there's these big ramps. And I remember you don't have that many vehicles. It was really fun. And I was like, damn, why isn't the whole game like this? You know? But you know, it's God, my feelings on it are pretty complex. It's got a lot of stuff in it that tried to be different, and I just don't. I think if they did a sequel to it and they paid attention and had like a specific vision, it probably would have gone over a lot better, or would go over a lot better if they ever followed it up with something. But like the guns and the vehicles, you could get rid of that. If you want to have weapons, whatever, I'm not against that, even though I do prefer like just you hit stuff as a ball or whatever. But I don't like the driving stuff in any game. So that's not even just like a critique of that game. That's just in general because I think it slows things down. What would you call it? Sky Troops? Let me see. I'm gonna look it up. That's the great thing about the internet. When you don't remember or know something, you can look it up. Let's see here. Oh, that's somebody playing the OST. Okay, stage 4. Yeah, this is the one. See, a level like this is really good because it reminds me of a Sonic game. And yeah, I know they're trying to make Shadow different or whatever, but he is basically a when it comes to his powers, they are very identical to Sonic's. But a level like this is really good because there's none of that other crap that made the game unappealing in its other stages. There's no vehicles. You've got, like some little stops here or there, but it's like just stuff being explained to you. And you're just going forward and you're like, you might take out some enemies here or there, but it has it has a very clean, polished, like it's visually pleasing with the brightness of the sun coming in, and you go into this place and it's a little bit darker, and then you come out and it's bright. It's got this very simple from start point A to point B type thing going on as well. It's just a much cleaner stage than what is unfortunately a majority of the game. I probably would download that game as like a ROM or something, and then just play through it until I get to that stage, just to play that stage again. It looks really fun. And I remember having fun with it when I first played the game. I was like, wow. I feel so bad for Shadow. It's like here's this character who was so popular that he got spared from being kept deceased. And then it's like you look at his usage since Adventure 2, and it's either being in some game that people don't really think is that great, if it's whether it's his own game or next gen, or if he does appear in something, it's like a supporting appearance where he doesn't even like, what I'm talking about. It's sad, man, because I really think if you took his powers, which are again similar to Sonic, whatever, but if you try to accept the fact that you've got a character who has very similar abilities to Sonic, but they're like the main differences are like chaos control and you can like teleport places. It could have been like you could have really had a secondary franchise on your hand, but they just squandered it, man. This guy said we're more likely to get a Rouge the Bat game than to get a Shadow 2. Oh man. I wouldn't mind a Rouge game where you just go around stealing stuff and like it's a time heist and all has to do with stealth and hiding in shadows and whatnot. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I'm open to a lot of stuff. I've been over that before. Like just from the standpoint of gaming or anything else, just like explain your idea. If it sounds like a cool concept, I'll say, all right, I like this. The vehicles were a huge downfall. I feel the guns I didn't mind. Well, the guns don't stop the momentum of the game. Like you don't have to use them if you don't want to, and you don't have to shoot the enemies with them either. You just have one in your hand. But the vehicles, I don't like them at all. Like you will never get like stuff like Riders and whatever the other Sonic racing game is. Like I don't care about them being in vehicles because that's a racing game and like they're in vehicles because realistically they can't keep up with Sonic if he's running on foot. But my biggest problem with this is that you have a character who you start the game and he's falling down to this dark city and you're running, right? And then the momentum of the game stops, so you can get in this car that is slower than your base speed and drive in it for however long. And it's like that. I just didn't enjoy that feature at all. Like I said, I'm not against them doing another game for Shadow and whatnot. I just think that they picked up a lot of like I feel like what happened was they didn't want him to just be a clone of Sonic. Um, so they introduced this other stuff to try and differentiate them. Like yeah, Shadow is edgier and he's got weapons and whatnot. But it's like it just didn't work for me because in a practical gameplay sense, I didn't think the vehicles were a worthy addition. And hey, I'm down for that. A Rouge the Bat game. Yeah, imagine where you can like go around and you're like hiding in shadows. Then when like the light moves, you fly over to the other part. It's like this big heist, and then like some levels are like that. Then some other levels you have it's like basic Sonic gameplay of like running and getting to a like you could really have missions where you get higher scores depending on how fast you complete them. Where you like memorize patterns of stuff moving and find ways to get around it. I think that would be really cool. Like Rouge is a very unique character in terms like in Sonic in terms of her abilities and like her personality because like a Knuckles game, like even though her and Knuckles have similar powers because of her thing of being a thief, you can have like a whole game based around that easily. Hey, when I was thinking of like the line of like, "Oh, this isn't your dad's Sonic anymore," that reminded me of like this one person was talking about how when GT came out in America, they put out the first trailer, and it's like the Japanese the dun dun, that theme, right? And it was like this really classical take where it's got the English voices, but the Japanese music, background music, stuff like that. And then when it was like coming out in Tsunami, they're doing oh, and it's like this really extreme. This ain't your daddy's Dragon Ball anymore. It's crazy because like if you watch the DVD releases of that show, they do like course correct. Like they take out the music they made for it for the English dub, and they put the Japanese music in with the Japanese intro. And it's so interesting because it's like they really did flip flop. Like they went from promoting this as being the same show just with English voices to all the English songs and hipness and this ain't your daddy's Dragon Ball. You know what I'm saying? And then they flip back to the classics like theme. Yeah, when GT originally had its English trailer, they had the Japanese music, the dan dan go go, that song. And then when it was like being promoted on Toonami, they were doing this like the step into the grand and this isn't your daddy's Dragon Ball. and and then when it got released on DVD, they went back to the Japanese music again. So they flip flop. Like first it was Japanese music for the promos, then the hip hop, for the English, and then like release on TV, then back to Japanese for the DVD. Oh my god! Like I remember that promotion because that was that guy's way of describing it, that the daddy thing. But like that's really how it went. Where they went from Japanese for the commercials to English for the actual damn show to Japanese for the DVD release. My God. That's what Shadow felt like to me with the guns and the trucks and whatnot. It's like this ain't your daddy's Sonic. Oh my god. So much for being consistent. They couldn't find their footing. Dude, I'm not even joking. Like all they had to do was just get rid of those sometimes it's best to leave stuff alone. Yeah, and it's like they really were afraid that if they make this game more like a typical Sonic game, people are gonna be like, "Hey, what's the point? Why not just only make Sonic stuff?" So they felt like they had to add in these other like features and whatnot to make it more different. Dude, you know what's another good series for that comparison? Because my dad used to like the original Transformers when he was a kid, and then the first movie came out when I was in like I think fourth grade or something, and it had like swearing and um intercourse jokes and all the rest of that, and characters getting like chopped up and stuff. It's like this ain't your daddy's Transformers anymore. It's like no, it's not. You watch the first show where like the bullets, except for the 86 movie, just deflect off the characters, and they I mean like it's like very lighthearted for the most part. Like yeah, it really is like a whole different thing with the same name on it. It really isn't your dad's Transformers anymore. Too overambitious, as you said before. Yeah. And somebody made a really good critique. They said the game should have had less levels and it should have played more into the aspect of good or evil with like with alterations of like, hey, maybe if you are evil, you go to this level, or if you're good, you continue on this path. Because you know that game has like what 7 different endings where there's one where Shadow kills Eggman. Then there's like the true proper ending where he takes out what was his name? Black Doom, I think. Um yeah, if that I feel like if that game had less levels and only maybe like 2 endings, it would be a lot more coherent and no vehicles. Because I really like people always complain about the crappy controls in Sonic games, but Shadow's controls in that game were never a problem for me. It's just like the stuff surrounding him and the way the levels are formatted and except the sky one, that one's perfect. And like the quest they want you to embark on, you know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff in that game that if it was just tweaked and moved around a little bit, it would be a lot. Because people do not like when I listen to criticisms of it, they do not critique it the way that they do Sonic '06. Like they don't talk about Shadow's gameplay being awful and I can't even move and all the rest. Like you know, that's one of the like universally agreed things that's like okay or all right. You know, like it doesn't need fixing. Damn, now I really want a Rouge game. I'm gonna have to make a video where it's like a story, it's like a concept of how that would play. Damn, a thief game where you have to like avoid opponents and like avoid specters of light. And if you get seen by the light, you have to fight maybe some boss or something. Where it's like a punishment for not being stealthy, but it's also a way of like being able to redeem yourself. Like it's not an instant game over. Because I do hate that when you're playing some game and then like this person saw you have to start all over again. Yeah, I never see anyone complaining about the controls in Shadow. I'm telling you, that game could have been one of the best ever if they just fixed some stuff around. I wish they would just get rid of vehicles in Sonic games that aren't spin-offs, period. I'm tired of and he's the only one they do it with. Like, oh, in '06, yay, look at this ice stage where he's running around. Oh, now he has to get in this truck. Yay. Or whatever that thing was. I told you ever since '06, they're afraid to have games where there's multiple playable characters. That game put them in some kind of like canatonic state where where it's like, guys, we've got a new Sonic game. Oh, okay, who can you play as? Sonic and no one else. You know what I mean? Like, man. Do you think Team Chaotix missions is like a draft of what a Rouge game would be like, sort of to an extent? But I guess when I think of gameplay surrounding like how you control her, it wouldn't really be about speed in the sense of like running from point A to point B. It would more so be like the mission part of it, right? The task is something, but I think you would be rewarded for like how quickly you're able to do it. Because remember, in like a game like Adventure 2, once they get off those walls, they can come down pretty quickly. So I guess there it would sort of be a template, but it wouldn't be centered around like running at this really fast speed. It would be completing stuff and getting a higher score depending on how quickly you were able to do it. And like progressively stuff would get a little bit harder. Like I guess as the game would progress, you would be encouraged to like actually like stick to the shadows for the stages where you had to like, you know, not be seen by sunlight or something. Because I would have like the bosses that you fight become more difficult, like take more damage, stuff like that. Um, but even then, that's like a gradual thing where, you know, like as you play through it, you'd have like, let's say 7 or 8 worlds or whatever, 10 stages, 12, you know, 15. But I would make sure you'd have some component because I wouldn't want the whole game to just be like hiding in corners and stuff. I want like, you know, some parts that where you probably would have like something similar to the running stages. Maybe you don't run for as much, but you have to like give people a little bit of variety. because I could see someone getting bored of like, oh, I have to stay here and make sure this light doesn't see me, or else I have to fight this boss. So the stages where you're not doing that probably would be something where it's kind of like a tutorial on like, hey, if you see some enemy, this is how you attack them. Like you get what I'm saying of how they would prepare you for the increasingly more difficult bosses that you would get as the game progresses. I think you know what I'm saying. Like I think if a game like that would work if it has two separate modes and one of them is based around stealth and the other is just like practically like just getting from point A to point B. With some kind of in-story explanation for why she's trying to get to this certain place and talk to this person. And, that sounds very cool. Like a much more stealth-focused game with a mixture of some speed sections as well. I mean, think of Sonic Unleashed. You had the stages where you're running, um, and then other stages where you're just being the werehog and just doing stuff to move around and progress from the level and whatnot. So it would kind of be like that, but there really would not. The reason I like the stealth stages because they would encourage you to focus and pay attention to like what are the patterns, what ways are these lights moving, and when one of the lights catches you, it's not immediately game over. You can redeem yourself by taking out some boss of like let's say like a robot that's seen you or spotted you or whatever. Um, and if you are able to defeat them, the light is gone up there, and maybe you'll even have some people who will like the difficulty of having to fight three, four, five, six enemies on these stealth stages and just get rid of all the lights, as opposed to having to keep avoiding them, and like you know what I'm saying, like you get to pick your difficulty effectively of like, do you want to have this be easy by just avoiding the enemies and staying in your stealthy mode, or do you want to have the challenge of defeating all of the different robots that are there that will see you if you are caught by the light. Dude, I'm really thinking of actually making like a Rouge the Bat game proposal video, just like outlining all this stuff. Like the more we're talking about it. Oh my god. Well, if Sega doesn't deliver, it's because they're trying to rush stuff out. I wouldn't mind sending them my idea and being like, hey, if you guys want to copy this, be my guest. No, a whole game centered around Rouge could be very interesting because you could have like we don't know how fast she can run, but like we will like I'll just assume it's like slower than Sonic and Shadow, but it still is like something that's not that's like better than normal people can run. So you could have your speed stages and you can have your stealth stages. And in the speed stages, you have the option to fight enemies. In the stealth stages, you have the option to fight enemies. Um, and I'd say if you're gonna have bosses, um, I don't know. I think it would be really cool if you had bosses where you have to like do something where it's about exploiting like a weak point, like you climb onto like some big robot and you smash into a part of them that can't take the damage or whatever. Like just to keep playing up on that element of stealth. Man, I'm just think I'm picturing this game in my head. I'm like, wow, I wish I could play this. No, it would be I think it would be something that has the better elements of a lot of the 3D Sonic games of like running, but then also it has its own like it has these separate stages, the stealth ones, where it's more based around patience. Like when you run, you're just how fast can you do this? And with the stealth ones, it's still possible to do them quickly, if you recognize the patterns, but it's based more around like your mind and just picking up on patterns of stuff. So yeah, that was my proposal for the Rouge the Bat game. You think I'm playing? I really would send that idea to Sega. Of course, nobody would listen to me because you know they don't listen to fans ever. I think there was one stage in SA2 that was focused on stealth, if you can remember. Yeah, and I'm saying I'd like something of an expansion of that, but with the option to not have to fight any enemies. And if you get like the penalty is you have to fight an enemy, but it's still like a redemption type thing where you can defeat them and then continue on in the level. Which is why I said that players would have the option of just being stealthy or being all right. You know what? I can take them. So let's just go through and beat these guys. But yeah, those levels would be based on patterns of like this light moves at this speed. This one's moving like this. I wouldn't have it moving to where you can't move past it, you know, or anything, or like find a way around it. I'm just saying that I think having a whole game where it's that and speed stages would be really good. I don't know. I just think it would be something unique. But look, I've been on here for 2 hours, my usual run time, so I'm gonna get off and hopefully grab something to eat. So thanks for showing up, Megumi, Akatsuki Merchants, and have a good rest of your Saturday. Thanks for participating, and I'll be back on Monday to discuss things.